All right, so hey, welcome back. So in my current premise in trying to pursue training mode network in like a more direct social format and opening the platform's eyes to the better picture of inclusion to forgotten IPs, the specific one that I was trying to push, and a couple of other ones on the books that they once housed that were lost not so much to time but lost to either biased or favored groupings for other IP choices alongside just not really having someone at the helm or the captain of that ship in order to house the IP collectively for their weekly, bi-weekly practices, like what Training Mode Network usually does. Another issue did happen on the books here that I'm sitting and going to take a look into now, and it's also one along that I brought along one of my friends and one of my cohorts and partners in the online aspect for PlayStation and PC both. This is Jaxvex that's returning to the panel here.
Yeah, I was saying, what's up, everyone?
Yo, now if I can pull it up. It'd be a lot easier if I could actually just bookmark it in the server. It would be a hell of a bang. All right, here we go. It'd just be easier if I could bookmark it in the server, but I found it.
You can forward it too, bro.
Oh, okay. I did not know you could forward specific announcements.
Yeah. If you hover over that message, and I think it's like hold. Oh no, it's just right there. Yeah, you can just forward that.
Okay.
Even to me or wherever we need to put notes. It could be like a channel or something that you make in your server too for note keeping. You can forward messages like that.
Oh, okay. Noted.
And that way you can from that forward message, it lets you go back to the server too and right to that message spot. So that's a pretty good way for. I mean, if there was any way to bookmark a message, that's probably the best way to do it.
Gotcha. Okay, but to go over the outline here from Aaron Curry, he is the respective preceding head administrator for Training Mode Network. And so to going over this, he decided in the coming months. This was originally posted in April 23rd of this year. And so the pending hiatus and the power transfer that he talked about here that he referenced is actually currently in effect. So he stepped down as the organization head of TMN Neo and the game leader for Grand Blue Fantasy versus Rising. And so he's where he wants to respectfully prioritize personal health, energy, and well-being. And so he's choosing to give up this part of his life in order to not really focus on the hosting aspect anymore. He's been the host of Training Mode Network Neo now for 2 years approximately since its initial rebranding from just Training Mode Network. There's a speculation on where the direction of it goes after him, which some people do follow. Let's see here. I'm sorry that this may feel out of the blue or out of nowhere. Just know that I'm proud of what our team was able to accomplish in my time as leader. We put on approximately 300 plus tournaments across 11 games, current and retired, which is an insane amount for a volunteer group. What does this mean for everyone at the moment? Hopefully not much. The Grand Blue scene will still have new folks that will be able to run it. The next cycle has been made, and I'll share the sign-up links in a moment, and the things will still continue as is. In the pursuit of transparency, come the end of May, there's a possibility that we will still be we'll be opening in a limited fashion or seized consistently on the RAN bi-weekly brackets. All right, and then there's a volunteer form that's here, so if anybody also seeks to volunteer, you're also free to respectfully do so. And I'm going to pull this up in a second because that's going to go over what all the different features are that they're featuring. There is a follow-up to this for someone who's the current acting head, but they're not actually sworn in as the official head afterwards. I'm just trying to see what here we go. John Flashkick's. So in reading John Flashkick's assessment here following, so it's an update on the future of Training Mode Network, and it's good news because it's not going anywhere. The server's still going to be up and assessments will still be intact. The game leads have decided that they want to take some break to be able to absolutely be sure of how to run the ship without Curry at the helm. I can confirm now that these things that I announced live during the last driving lesson stream So all TMNT brackets will break for about a month at the end of the current cycle, which was June 6th. That was the week before Pride FGC's major. Driving lessons will additionally pause for the month of July because the host will be traveling a lot. John Flash kicks here. And then I'm taking over managing the Start GG on a 4-month trial period so we can get back on our feet quickly. Then I'll reassess whether I can continue with the duty. My deepest apologies go to the game leads for jumping the gun on announcing these things without getting the proverbial green light, so to speak. A great example of the kind of mistake we'll be spending the month of June figuring out how to prevent. All of us on the team of Training Mode Network are very grateful to Dove and Curry for their leadership in making this community what it has become, and for all of your continued support of this organization through its reboot as TM and Neo, and for the opportunity that you give us to serve the FGC in this wonderful way. We'll see you next month. So, between the former and the present, so let's begin to assess some of the things here. What's your takeaway so far between the statements?
This is something I've seen before, and I guess we've already kind of gone over it with the first time this happened when Dove stepped down. You remember that because you were covering that part as well. And this statement reads almost the same to me, even with passing on the leadership, position so that things are continuing. Well, it kind of felt that way when it was continuing with Aaron and the 2 years, that he was in charge. And that was an impressive number, right? For the amount of events. We should probably focus on that part, but just how hard it is. You and I both already know this, how hard it is to get events successfully ran in the fighting game space online specifically. And for the reason that getting commitment is such a huge problem. People
Absolutely.
can promise you all day that they will show up, but every single time it comes to tournament time, you're always looking like, why are half of you not here? That is the cold, harsh reality of trying to TO online. And I think a part of the reason why people have these sort of announcements where it feels like this is not worth the time, because it's not worth trying to chase down people for commitment, right? And where it sucks on the TL side is that they put out so much beforehand, right? In the hopes that people will show up. And when that effort isn't reciprocated on the other side, right? You get things like this where they have to evaluate, is this worth actually investing time into if people don't want to participate? And I wonder if that is a part of the factor leading up to the last few events that they even ran before deciding, all right, this is it, right? This is no longer sustainable for us. And to put it in another example, just imagine this offline. The problem there would be with like regionals and majors, where you have to put up the money up front to reserve the hotel costs. And,
Oh yeah, you got to put a down
and
payment.
everything.
Putting down a down
And
payment for those spaces.
Right, and you are operating automatically out the gate at a loss. And if you do not get a certain amount of people to sign up, you are taking a hit, right, from all of that. So your goal at that point is really just trying to break even, and you're trying to promote and get as many people who, that's why they like to gauge beforehand. Okay, how many of you really want this, or will really show up, or will really pay? Because it is a huge risk for the TO to front load, for people to then turn around and be like, oh, you know what, never mind, sorry, my dog is sick today, I just don't want to do anything, right? It's like,
right, there's always a cop out.
People can cancel for whatever reason they want to. That should not be taken away. Nobody's saying that. But at the same time, I think consideration on the TO side and how much effort it takes for them to essentially put on a huge party to host for people, right? And you don't want to then leave them where they have sacrificed an hour or two of their evening, set it aside, and have to actively wait or chase down people. And it's a stressful situation for them because they wanted to put on a good event. They didn't want to have to figure out why it can't even start, right? That's the least
That should be the least thing to
of their
worry about.
worries. They want to focus on, is everybody having a good time that decided to show up and actually participate in this. But again, that's kind of a tangent right now. Just sort of trying to guess and look beyond the words on the screen and see, okay, well, what could have really kind of gone down here? Because this is not the first time I've seen this. And I don't want it to, I do want it to be the last, but I definitely don't want to ignore what I'm sensing from a lot of this. It's just like the
Right.
direction. Right? There needs to be a very clear, if there's one thing that's going to turn this around at this point, in my opinion, the next person to come in and take charge needs to have a very clear direction moving forward and a vision that is clearly explained to everybody else with some type of assurance that it's not going to be like, okay, well, I'll just quit whenever I feel like it's not worth it, right? They need somebody who is going to be here and say, I will do this. Whoever's going to show up, I'll be here, right? And this is just how it is.
That's the tricky part, because there's someone that has to prove the commitment in order to come in and kind of like be a parental figure as well as an informative captain.
Yeah, you really need it's a huge issue with online. It's not an easy issue to solve. It's probably the main difference between online and offline. Offline, the commitment is you spent money to get into the venue and you prepaid for this. You don't come, that's on you, brother. That's your money, your loss. You know, there's more of a stake in it. Whereas when you're competing from home, this is your house, your internet, right? Who's going to tell you that you need to show up on, well, you signed up for it, but who's going to tell you you need to show up on time, right? You show up and do things your own way and you're in the comfort of your own house. That mindset is so hard to argue against for free online events that you don't really have a way to force, because you can't. If you could force people, this would be easy. You cannot force people to do or commit to things other than a DQ, which if that doesn't negatively affect them, whatever, right? They're not going to care in the first place. There has to be a real consequence for committing to things and then backing out. It's why when you go to the dentist's office and you schedule a visit and you don't show up, guess what? They're going to call you and say, yeah, we're charging you a $25 no-show fee, right? In the real world, businesses charge you no-show fees because time is a valuable commodity. Time is time, or money. When you waste people's time, you are wasting their money in real life, and they will charge you for that time, however they want to quantify it. There's no way for TOs to do that. And again, not saying that we should do that, but that's the problem that you face with commitment online when you don't have the ability to enforce some type of consequence for breaking that.
I will say, though, in response to that there are a few places across different IPs that have attempted to have like a reimbursement premise where you do pay to enter. So you do have to commit to it to some degree because you put your money in order to do something. So you have to win.
But that is largely fought against, and I have seen TOs like Khalil, right, long time ago, tried to, when he was doing Wampa Warriors, tried to set up a paid a month in advance. I think it was like $20 he was going to set it at, and he was doing it for the DNF duel community. And it's like, you guys pay and the money will go into the pot, right? And I think he wanted to do that for a few other games that he was running. People people ignored it. Yeah, just nobody wants to do that. Nobody wants to put in money, and that's a solution that exists in other esports leagues where you have buy-ins because that's how they function. That's where the money. They understand that in order to run things at a scale like that, you have to have some sort of buy-in from the players themselves. And the FGC will not do that because the FGC, unlike every single other competitive esports, is built on grassroots and built on the idea and foundation that you can walk in, wash everybody, take the prize, and leave and never show up again. And you just be added to the Hall of Fame, right? Because nobody knew who you were, but that didn't matter because there's no restriction on stopping you. There's no one that said, "Hey, you got to actually pay $100 or pay $1,000, right, to even participate in the league, and then you'll get some of that money back if you make it to a certain point." But like, there's no paywall or anything that's like, or there's no, hey, actually, you have to be a part of an official organization. We don't just allow people to walk in because that doesn't feed into our system of how we pay for all this shit, right? You gotta actually be something. The FGC will not do that, and that's just because of that's how the FGC is structured, and in a lot of ways you can't just turn the FGC into that. It doesn't really work that way.
Yeah, I'm about to say, because we're in the middle. That sounds like for what the FGC is, and then what it is now with the money that's come in for certain particular IP outlets. It sounds like we're in the middle of a very aware identity crisis or an ethics crisis.
Yeah, the FGC has definitely broken out of the niche sort of stereotype that has been applied and spread throughout the years. Where a long time ago, I think that stopped being true with the advent and influx of esports and influencers / content creators in the space, where you can follow. And I've been doing a lot of FGC history deep dives of just looking at videos and looking through old forum posts and stuff, just trying to get a picture of the FGC throughout the years as I remember it, and places where I remember interacting with it before going back to my own life, because there was a time when FGC wasn't most of what I do, right? It was just I play fighting games my whole life, and I kind of dip in to see what the hype is about around certain things. But I wasn't heavy in competing, and I wasn't heavy into the community side, which when you get to a certain level of competition, you can't just be a antisocial, I don't want to talk to anybody, I just want to show up at tournaments and win. Because as a competitor, you have to engage with people so that you can fight a multitude of opponents and really build out your mental fortitude, your reactions, your matchup knowledge, a bunch of things that apply across the board. It doesn't happen if you just sit there and don't play anybody and just expect that you'll obtain god powers out of nowhere, right? No, that's not how it works.
Yeah, I've seen that in many different things. I know, well, fighters in Mortal Kombat and Injustice, I've seen that where it's like, okay, you just won't play anybody, and then you're surprised where there's one or two people actually happen to pull it out the hat, and you just didn't think about it because of that precognitive assumption of I could just naturally beat everybody here.
Or I don't even think it's that. I think it's really some people know the truth. They just do not want to engage. This is more interpersonal issues, I would say, and maybe this goes back again. Everything goes back to the community issues. So let's think about it, right? We recognize this problem. We recognize that there are people that behave in this manner, and let's take a step back. They're doing this inside of the what? The fighting game community. And I've described this to you before, but let's put a description on the word community so that we have some sort of baseline moving forward on how we want to describe behavior and how it aligns with our own description, right? That we're saying right now. A community should be a group of people that care for one another. Period. Nothing else. So, with that description in mind, and with these behaviors, let's look back at that scenario, or just scenarios where people do this. Is that the behavior of somebody who cares about another member of their community, that they would sit there and avoid them for any reason? It could have been, I don't want to play you, or I think I'm better than you, or I think you smell bad, right? But all those reasons, are any of those good enough? And do any of those fit the description of community should be people who care for one another, period?
Okay.
And I think that's that again, a lot of this it really comes down to that. If you just keep that in mind the whole time we're kind of going through this, and anything that kind of stands out to you as odd, or you can't figure out, man, I just wish, what's the answer? What's the solution to this problem? This community problem? Well, think, is what's happening, does it align with people who care about one another? No? Well, then maybe that's where you start. Investigate there. Why don't they care about each other? What's going on? What's the reason for this conflict? When they should, the default should be you have no issues with them, or if you do, you're not letting it get in the way of community functions, right? But if you're not getting along and nobody's stepping in, or nobody's trying to mediate, or everybody thinks it's fine, or even worse, if everybody's building their camps and their cliques instead of trying to resolve the issue, right? Those are signs that you really don't have a community right now. You've got a war.
Right. Now, so chat, next thing I'm noting here, which is the two are and are not correlated here, since this is invincible versus thing. So in a past thing I've studied, there was a prior pending server breach that had happened, where there was someone that had something to do with streaming something that they should not have on one of the training mode network outlets. And so it was a breach of contract. They were immediately kicked out, and then all of the stream keys for everybody that was a host were like reset. So everybody from like that week forward, when they had an event or something to host, the main dude gave those out specifically, because it was just like a random thing that happened where he's just like, okay, he can trust the others, but respectfully cannot trust them at this particular time to do like their individual things to oversee, because of the violation in streaming either the versus beta or the game itself, and then just didn't switch the stream keys back to his own original stream, and that cost him big. That happening in the middle of this also adds to the ambiguity of how do you resume the template of this server's government? What is how do you reinforce the governing aspect?
Again, is going to go back to I hate to keep saying it, but it is going to be core community issues. But at least in this aspect, I can actually pull up one of my books, because I own it as a book that I can reference while we're on this call. So give me a minute.
Sure.
Pull up. So we're trying to talk about how the community itself restructures. That would be the art of community that we need to look at. And let's break down the problem, or what seems to be the problem. The problem seems to be that at this point you've lost two heads in the last
like
two to 3 years,
approximately. Yeah.
When was the training mode network started? Do we know? What's their origin?
Let's see.
Was it started with Dove?
Yeah, but let's see when it happened. It did start with him, but I don't know when he started it.
Okay,
so damn, that was a ways ago. Okay, so early 2010s. So we're looking at decade plus.
And I want to guess in that era of FGC, that's sort of the era, like I was mentioning before. I'm doing my deep dives, trying to piece together
Also a
early
bi-weekly tournament.
stuff.
Started on
Yeah, I
Rev
would say
2.
like post 2015, 2016 is how we ended up in the current modern day FGC. So around 2010s, I would classify that as like the previous era of FGC that this started in, which means stuff is definitely from, right. This is right here, 1 year after the 09ers and Ultra Street Fighter 4 revival. So this was a pretty big time for fighting games to really pop back on the scene and to come into that sort of environment and be the one to say, "Hey, I'll be the one to gather people together so that we can all come together and train and compete and grow." Right? I feel like that is the origin. Without talking to Dove about this and getting his input directly, I feel like that's the origin of how this started. And it's a similar origin story to uh, a lot of orgs that do stuff like this. Like they just want people to come together and play, right, and have a good time. And for this to be in the early 2010s, let's say like 2012, 2013, maybe around then, because it could have been 2011, but it's been well over a decade that this has been going on. And Dove, I'm assuming, was head for a majority of that before stepping down and giving it to Aaron. And then Aaron's tenure was way shorter, which
That it is a bit
red
surprising.
flag.
I was expecting them to try and at least get it in for a few years. I didn't think it would be 2.
So the issue right out the gate, it seems that there is a lack of legacy, right? Because we're not going to say that any of this was ran incorrectly. It made it this far over a decade of
Investment,
service to the FGC, and probably thousands of events. Who knows how many players have gone through here and leveled up their game? Something that is very important in the FGC. So it's not an issue with the community not functioning, right? It clearly has some purpose and some method to working correctly, the inner workings. But that seemed to have all been tied to its leaders with Dove and Aaron. And when you lose leaders like that and you don't have a clear vision, or even kind of like, this is where training mode started over 10 years ago, and to this day we still believe in X, Y, and Z, and that's why in the future we're going to move forward, and we promise to do these things. Just something to give people a reason to believe that the legacy of Dove and Aaron will continue to go on, and they're not just it. Training Mode Network wasn't just those two people. So
right?
I think that's the issue that they really face at a critical time, because if they don't figure it out on this last transfer of power, the next one could really be the last, because now you have a bunch of people who aren't really sure of the direction and vision of the community, and that confusion causes people to look elsewhere
Right.
most, and you start bleeding your members because you don't have any sort of structure. So you definitely want to get that solidified right away. Like, hey guys, don't worry, we are still the Training Mode Network, even without the people that started this. That's fine, because they started this as not something that's going to be for them. They started this for the community, and now the community is growing and it's on its own 2 feet, right? Just like a parent.
I'm about to say, it's almost like a parent and a kid ideology. Yeah.
Not supposed to be here the whole time, making sure, that child wakes up in the morning, brushes their teeth, puts on their suit and tie, gets in their car, drives to work, right? Gets in the office and drinks their coffee. The parent's not going to be there. At that point, the child has matured, and people need to, that's the legacy part of this, is where the training network needs to mature past Dove and Aaron. If it cannot mature past them, I don't see a very good future for this.
Because the main thing here that they got to keep their foot on the gas about, I think, in terms of the narrative about Training Mode Network, is to have an interlock a unified consensus about the focus point of pipelines and the focus point of community pipelines and how everything begins or continues for that matter. Not so much the state of being, but the state of what will be.
Yep. Yep. And that's part of their overall vision to communicate, and that could also, in this context, be considered their legacy. Their legacy is the ability to run these events for multiple games and have people dedicated for each. When you lose that functionality, right, you're losing part of not just the function of your community, but also your sort of purpose and legacy, because that's what you guys have been doing for over a decade, right? That's what you started when Dove started this early in the 2010s, right?
Right.
We were assuming it was started for that reason. So now, if we're saying over a decade later, you didn't grow from that point, you actually shrank, or you're losing people. That's not a good sign of growth. You should be able to again evolve past this point and still keep some type of consistency going, or even if you can't run at a scale that you used to, at least downsize where it's manageable and that you can still offer the same output just with fewer variety, right? But don't
Correct.
don't hurt the ability, because again, that's been a decade. If we want to say that was the goal of Trading Remote Network, it's been a decade that they've uh, aligned themselves with that goal.
Then
And
they've succeeded. They've done the one thing no brand in the history of this scene has ever done.
yeah,
Because like the player of tomorrow is always is always assured because this is here.
yep, which is a very, very important function
So
in
if
the
they do,
wider community.
yeah, like the broader lens. So the wider look here on the games that they're trying to look for here. And chat, if I missed something or we missed something in our thesis, feel free to chime in and let us know. So the ones that have been inactive, there's a total of five technically that are inactive, and then there's others that are standing mainstays at the moment. So Guilty Gear was a mainstay, Central Fiction was a mainstay, Tag was a mainstay, Under Night 2 is a mainstay, Ultimax is a mainstay, Exert is a mainstay, Rises was temporarily inactive and then it became active again because he was able to find a respective replacement. And then Virtual Fighters, I believe this is 50-50 because I don't know what they're going to be doing towards 6 or if the person was slowing down in light of the 6 hype. One of those two dice rolls.
So, how are these games chosen? They say in there how they go about their selection process.
Originally, from what I could
And
find, the first batch of them were all under the original administration, and so they were grandfathered into the second generation. So Ultimax was grandfathered. Uniclur was originally there, so Under Night 2 by default was grandfathered. Tag and Central Fiction grandfathered. Rising, I believe that was voted for. Strive, I believe that one also came by association with Exert. Virtual Fighter, I have no idea.
so there is community input on the titles that get ran
Yeah, because like they
for
said
these
here,
events.
for one of the mods here. So when someone made the reference, and I'll reference back to this, that someone asked about, okay, is it possible to have Invincible versus channel or perchance a tournament? So all the different channels that they have over here are events that they have either hosted a game night for or hosted an event for or have catered a standing or slight interest to. So they're not biased in a sense in the terms of they will give it a shot if there is a respective interest for the beginner level.
And let me pause here, because the more I think about it and kind of how I've been going about my own TO experience and things, uh, To me, I see a lot of people do this, and again, we know why you want to gauge interest on the TO side because it is front loaded time that you lose if things don't go the way as planned. But at the same time, I feel like that is also the TO shooting themselves in the foot from the start because this process is based on one, a message in one channel from one person with no follow up to see their connection to the wider community and the interest there. And this is a problem that I think has plagued a lot of the anime side of the FGC, where there's, let's just take training mode network right here, right? This is a community. We already talked about the origins of that community.
Why
Let's
do I get the
dive
feeling,
a little deeper. Where do the members come from? How do they scout these new players, right? Are
why do
there
I get this
certain
weird feeling that we want to tap dance into the community aspect and the boys club, girls club aspect?
It's not exactly that. It's more like being aware of
Like how all
not
these anchors
just
came into place.
not just your space, being aware of the larger space, right? I think a lot of people, and it's easy because we are the fighting game community. The fighting games are varied, and there's tons of them, and there's been plenty of them since the 90s that a lot
Very.
of people can go down and you could choose one game that came out 20 years ago and still be playing it today somehow. But at large, we are the fighting game community. And what we like to do a lot, especially in the anime fighting game side, is we like to tunnel vision where we are in the communities that we interact with, the people that we interact with. So when we
Like,
look
really?
at these issues, when we look at, okay, we have to gauge interest because if people are interested, we are going to waste time. Fair assessment, but why are you even struggling to find interest in the first place in your own server? When your own server may not even be the nexus for that community, right? It's kind of a, it's an assumption to sit there and assume that if you ask a question in that one place, right, only on Discord, only in that server, and you're trying to gauge for an entire game that you host beginner brackets for, that means these people are not known in the wider FGC. They may not even interact with it. Your job is to bring them into the FGC, but you're so limited in your pool and where you're reaching for people. Can you really be surprised that the attendance is going down right, year over year? Is
Because they're here wanting people from there to
reaching
be here when you're not going there to bring them here.
right, or you're not even putting yourself as a presence in other communities. And this is a problem again that isn't just Training Mode Network, but in the anime FGC, I see a lot of orgs doing this, and not even just the anime FGC. A bigger example that does this that absolutely can get away with it is TNS, right? They're the example that all these people sort of set their templates off of. Run multiple games, right? With high production streams with your own community. You don't go to the communities and you don't go to where the people are. You have your own dedicated space where you run your own multi-game events for the people who come and sit there for you, right? And support you. Everything is revolved around your brand community. Remember, we are the fighting game community. We are not the TNS community. We are not the training mode community. We are not the Iacon community or the Moonlight Tavern. We are the fighting game community. By definition, that means there are multiple groups. You can't assume that you are the most important or the only one. And then, again, be disappointed when you can't find people. Why? Because you're only reaching to a fraction of the people that you're trying to talk to, right? Have you really gone out and searched everywhere? Now, to give them credit, I'm pretty sure they hit all the regular places of event promotion, Discord channels, Reddit, Twitter, all of that. And promotion is another important part, and that's fine too to get your message out there. But that's also you, once again, putting yourself out there and expecting, now they'll see me, and that's all it's going to take. And eventually people will show up, and I'll have everything I need. What are you doing to put into the community first some goodwill to say, hey, this is what we're doing for you guys. Now, can you come help us out so that we, scratch your back, you scratch ours?
Now you see that's what they could do here with their base channel here that they have a lot of the stuff for. Even if Twitter is varied by interest, Twitter or Blue Sky would be a perfect outlet to start that exact premise of not opening up a volunteer aspect, but what you just said in
Yeah,
terms
just
of
having a outreach. It's like community outreach. So I'm looking through my art of community book now. So I'm trying to find the section in that will that talks about uh, what I was talking about here. But essentially, what I'm saying is, if we go back to the Training Mode Network, where they were asking for, so I mean, what is there? There's not even really an official process, is there? It's just people will say something, and if somebody says something, they may be like, okay, well, we'll see if anybody else agrees, or like, how do they track responses to then determine, we've got X amount of responses saying they want this. All right, that's enough. We'll run this event next week at 7 p.m. Blah 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 blah. Right? What is the metrics that they're using? Because this just seems like a very poor way to choose and even find the players for what you're trying to do. Right? If you're not going to where they are, if you're expecting those players to already be here where you are, you know, how do you capture that?
that is a very difficult brainstorm you propose.
I'm trying to find. I thought it was in this section here where they're talking about boundaries. It's more like they're talking about the community gatekeepers, which are also very important. But I'm more so talking about. I think it's the initiation principle. Yeah. So let me go over just this excerpt a little bit, because this is the thing that keeps coming into my mind.
Oh, hold on. Small theses. Okay, so one debunk, okay, that just came in here. So Uni 2 did get grandfathered in by association, not by vote. And they phased out Unicler respectfully because, okay, net play over rollback. So it got grandfathered in by association, not so much vote, but I'm sure people would vote to have it all the same. I just don't think they did it. Next thing here is one of the other mods acting. Really? Oh, okay. Did not know that. That is the acting server owner. Depending. Okay, pretty sure Dove had repeatedly said he really only focuses on hosting lesser play games. If the Uni scene blows up, there's not a big reason to host it here, but we'll see what happens.
So
okay,
let's
thesis
stop
2.
There.
Thesis 2 here.
Focus on hosting lesser played games, aka games that don't have a larger player base. And
so here's the original schematic of what Dovingly originally hosted before these games became popular. So let's break this down, because some of these I actually understand why they're discontinued now under that logic.
Yeah. So, I understand. So, well, but this wasn't at the very start of Training Mode Network, right? Like this was built up over time.
Yeah, these were it just started as just like a small assortment of games, and then he added on one or two lesser seen ones here to give them a home here.
I think having the exact start year would really help, because then we could like put an actual, okay, well they started this year and this is when these games came out, so we kind of understand where they're.
Well, this is a discontinued tab for, well, this is the training mode network tab, but this is for regular network, not Neo. So this was before 2023, before 2024, before the
Yeah,
thing.
I'm thinking before, way before that though, because there's so again, oh, you know what? Maybe I should start there because this is kind of why I wanted to look at why they or when they started and try to figure out a uh, a origin story for them is because origin stories are very very powerful. And I found the page right here. So let me kind of read through a little bit of the art of community here. Chapter 6, stories principle. Among the most important stories are origin stories. By definition, these stories explain how something started, i.e., its origin. There can be different origin stories for different parts of the community, but there must be a single origin story about how the founders were inspired to form the community. The story must include how they learned something new, did something new, and then invited others to join them. Ideally, community origin stories are true, but what true means can vary. There are many ways to tell any story by selecting what's shared and what's left out. Origin stories are often considered true if they share factual, emotional, or ideological truth. They are strongest if all three are represented. Community origin stories communicate who the community serves, why it serves, and how often it serves. More important, stories also share values. Stories do this far more effectively than a mission or value statement ever can. As communities change over time, the origin story will expand or new origin stories will emerge to explain how the current community differs from earlier versions. The new stories will all share how the community faced new challenges and responded accordingly. I think that's enough to really stop and digest on because most of what that was saying is literally what we were going through and trying to dissect. What's their origin story? What's their mission? How do they evolve past Dove and Aaron, who are no longer evolved? What's the legacy of the community? Where are things going? These are questions that need answers in order for this community to have any sort of confidence in the future moving forward. If somebody from the outside can't look in and see this for a community that is specialized in reaching out to people, right? And specialized in being open. If I can't even look from the outside and see how transparent you are as a community, how open you are, that's a problem. If I can't have any trust in the leadership to stay stable and have a vision moving forward, that's a problem. These are problems with the community. Do they even have a section where the origin story is explained, or if new origin stories are explained when things change, when leadership changes, and you have a whole different mindset on how things are ran? Do they explain that vision to the wider community about that change? Or just people just here because they heard that it was the cool place to be for beginner tournaments? That's dangerous too, right? You don't just want to be somewhere without knowing why you're there.
Because that's a simple explanation, but that's also a very, very dangerous double-edged sword.
I can continue on about the origin story thing real quick because there's a little bit more. There must also be stories about how community values are expressed and how they affect real people. These stories will tell everyone far more about the community identity than everything else combined. When you think of communities you appreciate, consider what stories are told to newcomers and shared over and over again among members. These stories represent the values all hope to embody. So in this case, in the context of the FGC, the stories that you share that affect real people are our top 8 announcements, right? Because we run events. Events are the lifeblood of the FGC and competition, and we share the results through these top 8 graphics, and they get shared online, right? Tons of people like them and retweet them and give congratulations.
They're part of the historical identity it contributes to.
Yeah. So that is a part of sharing stories, but there might be other ways you can share stories too to make people feel more engaged, more involved, right?
I will say, I will say on their accord, while they don't announce game nights like that, they do occasionally have game nights in here where they play like Repo Man or they play Among Us or something.
That can help too.
It helps create like a less not hostile environment, but a less competitive environment.
Yeah, because there are actually I want to mention this now while I have that on my head, because that I was reading a section that talked about that, and I'm telling you, this book has everything, right? You see how I could just immediately pick out chapters and go right. Well, this one's the art of community. This is John Vogel.
Chad, I tell you, this John Vogel and this Maxwell dude is trying to be my father, and it's almost working.
So we were talking about.
I don't even know the guy, and I love this guy.
There's trying to find the section in here where they go over invitations and belonging, right? So give me a second. Let me just find it, because I should read it directly from the book, since it's a really good excerpt on how people feel welcome in communities.
8 games.
So
that means this one, they had 8 games initially. That means, okay, this one was added, which I understand why it was discontinued. And then this one was added. So, hang on. That's 2024.
Okay, here we go. All right. An exploration zone. Well, I guess this is more so the probably speaking to the origins of training mode network and why they're essential to the wider fighting game community at large. An exploration zone is important for visitors. Visitors in this context being the people outside the community. So communities have boundaries, right? The community's not just open to anyone and everyone. There are obviously rules and shared values and things where you can decide if a community like that is something that's right for you, that you want to be a part of. But it's not just
there's like a structural belongs. There's like a structural there's a sense of it's just a sense of structure.
There's no community on earth that everybody belongs to.
No.
I'll say that again, just so that people can really digest that. There's no community on earth that everyone belongs inside of. If such a community existed, the leadership would essentially be the leadership of the world. That's not going to happen. That will never happen. All right. So communities by default start with a boundary, and usually that boundary is around the shared values that brought the people together in the first place to form that community. Just think about anybody who is, directly antithetical to those values. Are they somebody who belongs in your community? I don't think so, right? And nor would they even want to be a part of that. So there are boundaries, and when you're inside the boundary, consider yourself a member. You've already established this is where you want to be, and the community has accepted you. You've made it inside the boundary. Outside of your boundary, the area that Training Mode Network specializes in is where you have the visitors, people who are floating and looking on the outside in to see if this is something you actually want to be a part of, right? So That's the exploration zone. An exploration zone is important for those visitors. This is how we protect insiders while giving outsiders a chance to participate, to learn about our community, and to decide whether it's right for them. We can encourage explorers by sharing some specified activities and areas, but not all. These are outer ring activities. Areas reserved for insiders, whether formal or informal, are inner ring. The vast majority of activities can be outer ring. The larger the outer ring, the more outsiders can evaluate a community before seeking membership. It's important to have an inner ring too, as this gives shared value explorers something to aspire to and provides that important safe space for your members. This isn't exactly the excerpt I wanted to go over where they talk about having invitations. That's more so for people who are inside the community and members and feel like they're, kind of isolated, doing small things like, hey, I have a position here or title, or even if you don't have any position or title, but you're just somebody who's there, who's more comfortable with talking in the server or whatever. You do things like, hey, I'm going to hop into VC and, anybody want to play just some random matches, or, hey, I saw that you were messaging in general earlier. Do you want to hop in VC and do some games with me? Or just the game nights, right? Little things like that where you invite people or you extend an invitation, you make somebody feel like they belong in a place where maybe they didn't feel like they belong because nobody was talking to them before until you decide to do something. Again, you do not have to be the owner. You don't have to be a moderator. And you definitely, this is a responsibility, I would say, that falls on everybody to just be friendly. And an example of this that I can point to from my locals before they went down, I know there were people there who you walk through the door and they would sit down right next to you, be like, hey, buddy, this is your first time here? My name is whatever, right? Here's my gamer tag. What games do you play, right? And I know that's other people's locals try to keep that same energy. That is a very important aspect to the community building, as you can see, because those people need to feel like they didn't just walk into a random room full of people who kind of like the same stuff that they do, right? They need to feel like they walk into a room with what? A community, a people who care about one another. That's where we keep going to the very first part. A place where people care about one another.
Singularity.
But there was something else in here that I wanted to talk about too, about boundaries that I don't know if it'll be relevant.
Oh, we can
here or not, but they talk about
close up on that one.
Without a boundary, you'll face an everything nothing conundrum. Some communities want to be open to anyone and everyone. This arises from a generous instinct. Making a community open for all sounds welcoming. Most leaders, even if they claim to welcome everyone, actually mean something a bit more restrictive. If everyone in the universe, this is what I was saying before, if everyone in the universe is good and nothing is not good, then good things can never be differentiated from anything else in the universe. Essentially saying, if everyone is special, nobody is.
The syndrome effect.
Yeah, good then identifies no particular thing because all things are good. Likewise, if everybody in the world belongs in your community, this can mean your community cannot be distinguished from no community, because another part of communities is you're not just in one community, right? Most people throughout their lives are part of multiple communities. The very first one being your family. Your family unit is your very first community that you enter into this world with.
Absolutely.
And you do not leave, right? That is the community that you're stuck with pretty much the whole time. But we enter these other communities and you represent not only yourself, but the communities you're a part of when you go to these other places. So if you are saying that your community is a community for everybody, that means that all communities across the earth, whatever their values are, you accept them, including the communities that are obviously against each other. Remember, we went back to an example earlier with bad leadership resulting in communities splitting and not wanting to talk to each other. If you're a community for both of those people, guess what? You're saying, okay, guys, I know you hate each other. I know you don't get along. I know you don't share values, but guess what? Come over to me because you both belong in my community. They're going to look at you like you're crazy and inauthentic because they're like, what do you mean? I hate this person. He killed my dog, right? Or something like that. That's just irreconcilable. But you look like you are just pushing those issues away and past and saying, just join me anyways, right? Because I care about all you. That is kind of disingenuous to just be like, yeah, everybody belongs with me. No, that's not every community, right? We are people with different traits and different lifestyles, different choices. Not everybody needs to be in the same place, following the same rules, just like not every game needs to be made for every single person on Earth.
That's the catering that demographics try to like grill some of these new age games about, and trying to either make them for like just LGBT, or for just blacks, or for just kids, or for just adults, and put an M rating
That
on
just
it.
sounds like somebody's trying to make sure they get back a certain amount of investment, and they know there's a large group of people who will pay for those words and not necessarily the product. Here's
Possibly.
another section I want to go over too, leading up more over that community for everybody, right? Many leaders confuse self-selection, no invitation necessary, with everybody belongs. If someone in the history of the world can or will be excluded from your community, then there's some difference between potential insiders and all outsiders. No matter how small the difference or how wide the welcome, the distinction, shared value, is important to identify the future members can recognize it and understand that they belong inside. If you think of a very strong community, the kind that stands together even when facing death, right? Like Navy SEALs, that's a community too. It's a small, tight knit group of highly trained, specialized soldiers who need to go out and accomplish missions, and they have to watch each other's backs because any one person who fails or messes up could mean the death of the entire team, right? That is also a community. Think about it in those terms. Communities aren't just video game communities. They're not just your family, not just your churches. It is really just a group of people brought together
For a
by a
purpose.
common cause to who care about one another too, right? It's not just because another group of people brought together by a common cause,
A SEAL team.
Costco shoppers, right? You go
What?
to Costco because you go to
Oh
save
yeah.
deals, right?
That's
That's a
right. That's
common
right. Yeah.
cause. But are Costco members a community? If I go against one Costco member, am I messing with all of them? No,
No.
not at all, because Costco members are not expected to care about one another. They're expected to care about deals and wholesale shopping, right? But a community, going back to the Navy SEALs, right? They are expected to care about one another because they have to keep each other alive on these missions, these very dangerous missions. So, if you think about very strong communities, the kind that stand together even when facing death, the kind that spend their last resources to rescue a member in trouble or to travel great distances to support someone in need, whether monasteries, militaries, families, these communities have a clear boundary where they know who's in and who's not. Again, going back to the Navy SEALs, since that's just a very easy example to go off of, very clear boundary is a physical boundary, right? In order to even make it to that point, you have to go through Hell Week, right? Which is an entire week of basically no sleep and endless trials, physical trials that will push your body to the limit. And it's designed really to push your mental, right? Because they've had people who are like the strongest, top of the physique, and they don't even make it to like day 3 or day 2 in Hell Week, right? It's more about the mental and being able to go through these trials that are specifically designed to break you, but you keeping that mental together and persevering with your team. Um, People who can't do that, right? You're cut out. You're not made for this, because guess what? If you display that sort of weakness here in a simulated training environment with no risk, what's going to happen when all of our lives are on the line and you mess up? We're dead. We're dead.
Okay.
Let's see if I can find. I don't think it's in this chapter. That section where they were talking about inviting people to activities, even if you don't have any sort of authority in the community, just your simple invitation as a member to another member can make that member feel welcomed. No matter how small the activity, what it is you're doing, just say hi, right? You pull that person in, and you pull them in on the authority that you yourself understand that you belong. And not only that, you're saying that you belong and they belong as well, because they belong with you. That's the definition of caring for one another. You don't know this person, you don't have any power or influence, You don't care. You're making sure that they feel as welcome in that place as you do, because you're all a community.
It sounds like the right premise here was taken in trying to brain. It sounds like the correct premise was taken here in trying to be universally inclusive of everybody, and that's the ideology you want to have, is to have a sense of inclusion. That way, it has natural camaraderie. It has a natural, inviting, positive nature for the most part. And then you
But
kind
you
of weed
need
out the
boundaries.
negatives. You weed out the negatives from there, and then that which there. I mean, there's a sense of respect towards the people that have power or authoritarian brain, people with power or mods and whatnot, authoritative roles and figures, have a sense of respect here. But yes, like you said, there is a lacking sense of outlining boundaries for a sense. Hang on, let's go to the
Or
rules.
I wouldn't even say, the boundaries things, I wouldn't say that is a thing that they struggle with specifically, because again, they've been operating over 10 years. They know their limits and how, who they want in here. But another thing to speak to that is, because they've been operating for so long, what I want to know is, what are their shared values? That's what I should find. Let me find the chapter on values
That's a good
and the
question to actually
importance
ask this community.
the importance of shared values, because that also helps when you have these values, right? Think of it as a way of, how are you advertising to the community outside of this, that hey, if you're not in this community, you might just belong here because we believe in blank.
You put that here and then just see how that's responded to. Just for the heck of it, viewers, I'm just gonna actually just put this in the server here in the general section and just see. I'm actually kind of curious.
I'm trying to find specifically the section that talked about values. Uh, Give me a minute. It's in here.
Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and answer the question here,
Oh,
and leave this
sorry.
here just to
Just
see where that looks like, and probably in the next 2 days.
uh, quick addition here. I found the passage where we're talking about uh including members. Even if you don't have any influence and stuff. Let me go through that. So this is chapter 1, I believe, Crisis of Belonging. Uh, there's a common phenomenon in many groups, particularly highly selective elite ones, where many members become convinced that they don't belong. This can become true even when each member has been invited inside of an exclusive community. When we experience this, we may worry that our own admission was an accident, and further, that at any moment somebody may recognize this and reject us as frauds. The tragedy is that even when many members feel this concern, we continue with our lives as if this fear doesn't exist. Our community becomes a crowd of individuals, each one lonely and convinced that he or she doesn't belong in the crowd. This is a crisis of belonging. Blah, 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 blah. Can't count. Blah, 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 blah. Sorry, so stuff. Here we go. Invitations resolve the crisis of belonging, and as a solution, they are so simple as to be almost unbelievable. The invitations can be to social gatherings, insider events, or one on one time. When we as leaders extend invitations, two things happen that break down a crisis of belonging. First, we extend invitations. We establish ourselves as having the power to invite, no matter what formal role or title, if any, we might have. To those who are feeling a crisis of belonging, getting an invitation from anybody indicates that the inviter is firmly planted in the group and therefore has the power to invite others. This may sound silly, but it's exactly or actually how the world works. So when we ourselves feel a crisis of belonging, inviting others to connect with us allows us to plant ourselves more firmly within the community. An invitation to lunch, a walk in the park, a hot coffee can make a huge difference. We make invitations more challenging than they need to be. We fear that others will either reject us or simply dismiss our authority. Second, when those are trapped in a crisis of belonging, receive an invitation from any insider or community leader, the invitation itself becomes evidence of their belonging. Their concern that somehow they were really outsiders passing as insiders are challenged. Our invitation provides this necessary evidence that they are indeed insiders. This
Deceptive
evidence is
association.
this evidence is so strong that it's not even important whether they accept our invitation. Simply providing the invitations can resolve their crisis. So, the power of doing the game nights, that is the power of invitations. The power to break the ice, right, and not make it feel
Right.
as competitive, right?
Right. The
But also
invitation of
just
being in the community. Yeah, this it's the
yeah,
it's the,
you
it's the
belong
invitation.
here. You if you're in here, if you joined here, that means you believe in our values and we believe in you. So we are extending the invitation to you, the person who crossed the boundary and decided to join our community and embrace our values. We welcome you.
Okay. And again, chat, you guys have any questions, comments, or concerns, feel free to weigh in. This is definitely going to be something that I'm going to return to at least a couple more times in order to have an idea on like the collective narrative on like what's the pulse here. What does the pulse tell me compared to talking to the heartbeat, so to speak? And metaphorically speaking. So as opposed to talking to the ones in charge that gather the players, talk to the players about everything that's here that was built by the ones in charge. What do they see? What do they feel? What do they value? What do they hold? What do they cherish about being here in the scene of Training Mode Network specifically? I have one that already answered
Or
my
if they
question
can
here.
identify it. I'd say that's probably a thing to ask is, do they know the values? Do they know why or what the community believes in or what the server believes in? And if they don't, what do they believe the values are? I think that's an excellent question because first of all, it tells you if people even are aware that the community has shared values. Every community has shared values. If the members don't even know that, that's a problem in itself. But if they don't know that and they tell you what they believe the values are, and those values align with what you can confirm with the leaders, then at least you can see that, hey, people are at least kind of on the same page here. They may not explicitly know what things are, but they can feel it because of the environment and how people act. They kind of know how things are supposed to be here. But you do need explicit and implicit values. Explicit are stated values, something that you could point to, say, this is what we believe in. Implicit values are behaviors and traditions of the community members that you can look at and kind of infer, right, what they believe in and how things operate here. Both are important and you need both of them. You can't just operate on one or the other. If you have a community that only believes in implicit values and doesn't believe in plainly telling you what the rules are, you have members who are confused. And getting there, it's like, okay, well, I thought this was all right to do, but as soon as I did it, I was attacked and told to, I was stupid and all this stuff, right? And that confusion, they just walk away. They don't want to be somewhere where they're stepping on landmines. And then on the flip side, if you have people who clearly state things and you're like, I see what this community is about, I'm going to join it because I can clearly see what they believe in. And then they act completely opposite of what is stated on their rules, You're like, these guys are inauthentic. Nobody here is real. Everybody's fake. I don't want to be a part of a place where nobody actually does the things that they say they believe in. That's stupid, right? And then, of course, both results in people leaving. You need both values.
Right.
You cannot have one or the other.
So, food for thought. Let's definitely sit on this. I'm going to come back with another Q&A at some point in order to actually add on to this here that I'm just going to pop in the general section. And this is going to be our next episode when we go and revisit Training Mode Network, or at least until either the hiatus passes or if they have a consensus about the continued narrative and the direction of the boat here, because a lot of the main pipelines do hang in the balance of either whether or not this is continuing or if it diminishes. And diminishing, I mean like as in cutting some losses, so to speak, or just stop posting these in order to downsize. All respective and logical end results that may happen.
I find it, I'm looking at the screen now. What Mech Warrior says, is that an explicit or implicit value? Because, and I guess not ask it directly like that because it may confuse them. I mean, implicit or explicit in that, is this something that they believe is a value, or this is something that, again, they can point to and say, this is exactly what the Training Mode Network believes, because it says right here, section A.103, that the Training Mode Network believes X, Y, and Z, right? That's an explicit stated value.
Right. But no, I think this is not subjective, but I think it's a this might be generalized as like explicitly like learn fighting games, not so much the beginner aspect of fighting games. That's what's the translation of it is, but the main thing is that you come here to learn fighting games, not so much to play them, but you come here to learn them. That way you can play them, even though
I think you could
in
do
the
both,
rules states
so this is another thing too. Let's stop here and focus on this. Let's go back up to the first section. So these rules, right? These are ground rules that when most people think about running a community and managing a community, they think about the safety and the safety of members, right? And obviously, when you think about trying to keep people safe, you think of the obvious things of, well, you can't have anybody in here who will harm you because of skin color or sexual orientation or anything like that, right? You can't have anybody in here with drugs or guns or anything like that, because that's a danger, immediate danger to the people who are gathering in this place. Those are almost common sense rules, I want to say. And yes, you do have to state them here online, I would say, just so that people know that these are rules. But it's the things that, you don't walk into your grocery store and expect any of these things to be okay, right? No, you would get kicked out. You'd have the police called on you. It's nothing that you should really focus on as, all right, I said my rules and these are my values, right? I am an excellent community. We are so good because we don't allow racism. Yeah, nobody allows racism. What community would allow racism? That doesn't make any sense, right? What are your values that separate you and make you different from every other place on earth that does not allow racism or misogyny or homophobia, right? What makes you different?
All right, but chat, we're going to put a pin in this here, and then when we return, we're going to delve into the next aspect of what is the next things that you do want to delve into here in terms of like
really
community origin.
Focusing on the values, because I'll try to find that section in the Art of Community that goes over that, because it is very, very important to a community. And for this community, what we can kind of diagnose is what we see the problem is moving forward. They need a legacy, and they need a way to evolve past the original founders. That will start with having a solid set of shared explicit and implicit values, along with an origin story that is current with the current community, or an origin story that is changed from the original to fit the current community. These things are very important in explaining the vision moving forward, so that you can give confidence to existing members and that you can signal to your visitors, right, and the outside boundary that, hey, we're still operating, and this may be a place that you want to come check out and join. This may be the community for you, right? That's going to be very important for how they navigate the future of the training mode network and where they are right now, because this is a very critical moment to their future. They do not need to mess this up.
Right. All right, well, chat, we're going to leave this to the comments section. If you guys have any questions and follow through with this, feel free to ask Jaxvex or myself. And I'd love to hear you guys weigh in on the discussion, really. Like, actually, I want you guys to weigh in on this because it's really important for understanding value and similar interests that we've come to know and love and uphold in the scene. And so it just helps to have an idea on where we're all at.
Yep. Remember, communities at their core are people who care about one another. That's a great starting point for anything.
Exactly.
How do you build a better community? If you're having an argument with somebody about that, well, a community is a place where people care about one another. Boom. There's your starting point. Always start there.
Okay. Put that right there. That's exactly how we're gonna start this conversation. All right. I'm gonna go ahead and have us get ready to raid CaNoWhoLaughs and get ready to go over there. They're gonna get ready to start the Chaos Arena for PC exhibitions, for MVC, and for Dragon Ball Fighters, and that's where we'll be for the night. That's where I'm gonna go and do my commentary gig for the night. Jax, thanks for coming through and helping us really try and weigh in. And
right, that's why in our feelings we can even do that in the first place. We sense something is wrong because we know that's not how communities are supposed to run. Now let's actually put those feelings into words and things that can be talked about so we can find real solutions and not just roundabout, well, I think, this is what we should do, or maybe things happen this way, or speculate. Like, no. Let's have a real discussion on how to fix things, right?
Right.
And it starts with these concepts. It starts with what we know works. It starts with what we know is a good community.
Food for thought, chat. All right, we're going to get ready to raid CaNoWhoLaughs. We'll be back on the next episode of the Space Bridge. This is Jaxvex and Rodimus Prime signing off. And like I always say, right? Till all are one.
Take care, guys.